you start, I'll put everyone on mute. Then you please unmute and start, right?
Thank you, Logadas. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Tamil's Helpline Weekly Knowledge and Information Forum. Every Friday we have this at the 7 o'clock. I'm Dr. Puvinathan, one of the directors of the Tamil's Helpline and a GP partner working in Lambeth. I welcome our special guest tonight, Shaun Bailey, the Conservative Mayoral candidate for the Greater London Assembly. He is accompanied by Paul Scully, the Minister for London, and Elliot Colburn, Honourable MP for Carshalton and Wallington, and the Chairman of the APPG for Tamils. Paul Scully was the former Chairman for the APPG and my local constituent MP as well. Welcome you all. Today's session is one of the exceptions. It will be in English, not in Tamil as usual. Even though THL is a non-political organization, we invited Shaun as the Tamil community is keen to engage with a potential future London mayor, as the majority of the 500,000 Tamils in the UK lives in Greater London. The future of policing, transport, employment, immigration, education and business in London will affect our community. The majority of first-generation Tamils in London arrived as refugees from Sri Lanka after the escalation of civil war in 1983, including myself. We train or retrain in many professions such as health, business, law, that now contribute to the success of this great city. We continue to maintain our culture and heritage by hosting regular community events and educating our children in Tamil language, which is one of the oldest languages in the world. The onset of the COVID-19 pandemic brought us all closer together to help solve emerging challenges within our community. Many like-minded professionals such as doctors, psychologists, psychiatrists, lawyers, accountants, educationalists, and social activists of around 100 volunteers came together to help and advise the community under the umbrella of this Tamil helpline. We set up this free 24-hour advice line modeled on the Samaritan helpline. It is purely run by volunteers with no paid staff, no bank account. Since its inception last April, the THL has managed more than 2,000 calls. This has opened up the eyes of many of our volunteers to the social issues affecting our community. We identified a number of issues affecting people as a result of the pandemic, including mental health, alcoholism, financial problems, domestic violence, immigration issues, etc. There were 3 suicides in the last month among our second-generation children. Shaun, you are a community worker for more than 20 years. You will have a good understanding of the socio-economic issues we face. I wish you all of the best in the mayoral election, and I will now pass it to our Sutton Borough Councillor Param Nandha to chair our meeting. Thank you, Param Nandha.
Vanakkam Uravugale. Thank you, Dr. Puvi. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Councillor Param Nandha, will be the moderator for this evening event, along with Logadas in technical helpline and Dr. Puvi as a co-host in the event I have any technical issues. This will be a recorded event and would be shared on social and media later on. Please stay muted at all times unless invited to ask or speak. If you would like to ask any question, please type your questions in the chat box and you will be invited. And when you are invited, you need to be visible on the camera. So without any further ado, I would like to invite from British Tamil Conservative, Arun, to say a few words about our community. Thank you, Arun.
Thank you very much, Dr. Puvi, Councillor Nandha, and the Tamils Helpline for organising this forum. And thank you, Shaun, for joining us today. And of course, welcome to Elliot Colburn and Paul Scully. I want to take this opportunity to briefly introduce the Tamil community. Many of you would already have strong relationships with the Tamil community already. But in any case, the Tamil community in the UK has been a growing force in the last few decades. A dark history of persecution and violence as a result of the Sri Lankan Civil War led to Tamils coming to the UK to start a new life. Some with money and education to support them, others with only the clothes on their back. The Tamil community has, despite these hardships, been a beacon of successful immigration and integration in the UK. Holding fast to their values of culture, family, education, responsibility, and economic empowerment, the 500,000 strong members of the Tamil community have settled well in the UK, engendering many successful businesses and careers, including successful entrepreneurs, some running billion-pound companies, and others are local convenience stores. Executives at the top of many industries, lawyers, academics, doctors, and scientists, many of whom continue to lead efforts in the fight against COVID. However, the Tamil community remains a young community. As Tamils continue to face hardships abroad, the Tamil community in the UK continues to grow. Tamils in the UK are also sharply faced by the hardships that many such young communities face, including as victims of crime, some with ill access to better living standards, youth unemployment, pollution, increasing cost of living, as well as the added suffering brought about by the COVID-19 pandemic. Let's bear in mind, 1 in 7 doctors in the English NHS are Tamil. They have been on the front line and their families have suffered. Yet, the Tamil community has shown time and again that it grows stronger in the face of adversity, and it will continue to do so with the right support from lawmakers. Thank you.
Thank you, Aaron. Now I'm going to introduce our former chairman of the APPG, All Party for Tamil Group, and also Minister for Small Businesses, and Member of Parliament for Sutton, Cheam and Worcester Park, our Honourable Paul Scully MP. Thank you, Paul. You should be able to unmute now.
Thank you. No, so it took me a little while. Welcome, and it's a pleasure to be with you tonight. It's something that I really miss. My Betty is gathering dust at the moment because I've not been able to join the temple in Stonecroft or coming up to Ealing with Councillor Nandha for some of the amazing festivals and amazing engagements that we've enjoyed over the last few years. But I know we will manage to do that soon enough. And just Elliot, who's coming up next, Elliot Colburn, has done an amazing job in his work, bringing colleagues together across the House of Commons and the House of Lords to work on that new resolution that's just been passed in the United Nations. And I know he will share more of that with you. It's so important that we hold the government in Sri Lanka to account to make sure that we can get that truth, that justice, that reconciliation, following a sense of accountability. But also, thank you for everything the Tamil community is doing, as ever, not only in, as we just heard from Aaron, the fight against COVID, not only in the businesses, both big and small, that the Tamil community is involved in. And my work as in the Ministry for Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy sees that range of businesses that the Tamil community involved in. Like I can say, they're billion-pound businesses, but also as the retail minister, those small independent shops as well. So you are doing amazing work in keeping the nation well, and keeping the nation fed, and keeping the nation moving. All of these sort of things over the last year have been so difficult, but you've been right at the heart of that. So thank you. So that comes to Shaun Bailey, and Shaun is a good friend of mine, and I've seen him very close up, the way he has worked on his campaign. And I don't know if any of you saw his the debate on BBC London, BBC One London just recently. And I think there was a sharp contrast, and it's not necessarily a party political thing. This is, yes, clearly it's Conservative versus Labour as those two front runners, but it's mainly Shaun Bailey versus Sadiq Khan as the two front runners. It's the measure of the men. And what I saw when I tuned in was someone who had a plan, who showed strong leadership, who could therefore articulate that plan, next to someone who was trying to defend relative inaction. And at the moment, I'm trying to work really hard to get London's economy open again, to get London moving, as I say. And so we need that strong leadership. We need a single, coherent message in London. We need a strong draw to get people back into their workplaces, to make sure the centre of London, as well as all the suburbs, come alive once again, and not just survive, but start to thrive. But before that, we obviously need to make sure that our streets are safe for men and women, people from every background, every community. And that's why I'm really delighted to support Shaun. But I will continue to work for you in Sutton and around London, because as we heard from Aaron and Param, 500,000 Tamils within this country, you are just so embedded within the wider community. This isn't just an issue about the Tamil community, but tonight, as it is the Tamil Helpline, thank you for what you are doing, raising the issue of mental health, domestic abuse especially, which is something I'm working on in terms of trying to encourage support in the workplace for people that have survived domestic abuse. I'd love to touch base with those of you that are employers in particular, to talk further about that. But meanwhile, I really wish you every success in continuing success in the Tamil Helpline, and I hope you enjoy this evening. I'm sorry for those of you that also know me as the curry minister as before. I now have to go on, cook some curry for another call that I have to be on shortly. So my heart will be with you though as you enjoy this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. And I know you are very busy promoting Shaun and other businesses as well. And we are glad to have you again. So we are looking forward to see you very shortly. Next, I would like to invite the current chair for the APPG for Tamil and Member of Parliament for Carshalton and Wallington, one of the youngest MP Conservative had. And also he works very closely with Lord Ahmed and Foreign Secretary and other lobby group recently to bring a successful resolution in the Human Rights Council. So I would like to introduce our youngest Conservative MP and also Member of Parliament for Carshalton and Wallington, Elliot Colburn. Thank you, Elliot.
Thank you, Param, and thank you everyone for coming along this evening. And if I could open by echoing the thanks that everyone has done so far to the entire Tamil community for everything they have done throughout the course of the COVID pandemic. And I do that on behalf of the entire all-party parliamentary group and all of us parliamentarians. We truly do appreciate it, and we know that sadly we have lost many colleagues and loved ones from the Tamil community throughout the course of the pandemic, and we remember them tonight, as we will continue to do so. So I want to pay tribute firstly to those and to everything you have done. But thanks also in particular to the Tamils Helpline for getting set up and for helping the Tamil community in the UK through this difficult time. I really appreciate the work you've done, so thank you for that. The APPG has had a very busy year. Our main aim has been to try and encourage the UK to continue to take global leadership and show that global leadership where it previously has done to tackle ongoing human rights concerns in Sri Lanka. And that came to a head just this past week when the UN Human Rights Council passed a new resolution, 46/1, which for the first time has put a requirement on the international human rights community to collect, not just analyse the existing data, but collect new evidence and data of human rights concerns and abuses in Sri Lanka. I think that's an incredibly important achievement We've achieved a very strong resolution, much stronger than the original draft. And that is thanks not only to the colleagues of mine who have worked with me, but thanks also to all of you and to every Tamil organisation who has inputted into this and pushed the UK to be stronger when it comes to these human rights abuses. So thank you to everyone for making that resolution happen. We will be having our AGM when we return in a few short weeks' time, where we will be discussing and setting out our priorities for the next year. We know full well that this resolution will not be the end of the work that we need to do to secure peace, accountability and justice in Sri Lanka and for Tamils around the world. So our work will continue, and we will engage very closely with you, as we've been trying to do, to make sure that our work is informed by what is actually happening on the ground. So thank you to everyone who has fed into the work of the APPG over the past year and for engaging with your own MPs. It's really, really shown. So we appreciate that. But as has been said, the overwhelming majority of the Tamil community in the United Kingdom lives in Greater London. And I'm proud to represent, I think, in the region of about 3,000 Tamils myself in Carshalton and Wallington. And we need a Mayor of London who will engage with the Tamil community, who will know the concerns that the Tamil community has. So when it comes to the things that the Mayor is responsible for, like transport, like crime, like housing, and like the environment, what is the Mayor going to do for us? And I know that in Shaun we will have a Mayor who has a plan to deal with these and to work closely with the Tamil community. So I know you've come here tonight to hear from him and not from me. So I'm going to bring my remarks to a close, but I would just like to say thank you again to everyone for their engagement with the APPG and with parliamentarians. We've secured so much over this past year. I'm so pleased with the resolution changes that we managed to get. But the next big thing is the mayoral elections. And I'm going to hand you back now to Param and to Shaun so that you can ask your questions to him. But thank you for having me this evening. I hope you enjoy yourselves, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Elliot. Thank you for joining this evening. I'm sure after the lockdown, we will have a further visit to various Tamil places and we'll have a further engagement. Thank you, Elliot. All right, now we will invite the man who is going to be the next Mayor of London. Is our Shaun Bailey. I think we kept him waiting for last 20 minutes. So first we will hear from Shaun who you are and why are you getting into the politics and why you need to be a mayor. Thank you, Shaun. It's over to you.
Thank you, Param, for having me here. Let me just start by saying, really, really, really impressed with the work of the Tamil Helpline. It's a real testament to your community building such an organization so quickly and it becoming effective so quickly. It's really, really impressive. And I look forward to working with you in the future, because of course, one of the big challenges for a Mayor of London is to make sure the conversation is two-way. I think one of the failings has been that City Hall has become a closed shop. And what I want to do is have a very open shop, and organizations such as this make it much easier to really feel what communities are feeling and do the work to support those communities. So I want to say congratulations, because this is a wonderful organization, and I wish you all the luck you need in the future. And of course, if I'm mayor, you'll have a friend in City Hall. That's what I wanted to say first off. Secondly, why am I running to be Mayor of London? Because London needs a fresh start, because London can do better, because London needs that help. So I was born in London, I was raised in London. My parents are Jamaican, my grandparents are Jamaican. And I came from a very poor community. I was raised by my single mum, and we struggled and we struggled and we struggled. But my mum is strong. She believes in family, and she pushed me, and eventually I went through school and I made those things happen. But life wasn't easy. I was homeless for a long time. I was also unemployed as well. So I know what it is like to struggle in London. And all of these experiences drive my politics. And one of my experiences, of course, is then succeeding, being open and being lucky enough to have opportunities and understanding how to work those opportunities, how to get involved. And that's what I want to do for all of London. I want to make London safe. I want to make London secure. And by secure, I'm talking about housing. And when I say about opportunity, I'm talking about employment. Of course, the Tamil community is well known for its businesses, and I will be supporting those businesses, because every time you form a successful business, you employ people, and that is very, very important. My first experience of Tamil community was actually in Sri Lanka. In 2005, I went to Sri Lanka with my new wife. We had our honeymoon there, And we spent a long time in Sri Lanka going around, meeting separate communities, speaking to people and being on holiday. But the most powerful memory I bring back from that was what community was really like, how much you valued family. And it's very important to me because I grew up without my father. To see entire communities who valued family in such a way was really, really important to me. And if you bring that over to here now, that brings me to the first policy that I'll speak about. I heard Arun speak about unemployment for young people. But of course, if a mayor doesn't provide opportunity for young people, then they can't provide support for their families. So I have a plan to develop 924,000 jobs. I have a plan that will make sure that employment in London will be future-proof, it'll be modern and be well-paid, highly paid jobs. And of course, the young people in the Tamil community and the Tamil community in general are doing very well. Many of you are doctors, many of you are professionals, business people, artists, you know, you're across the board. But it's exactly the kind of output that your communities had that I want to make sure we have more and more for all communities in London. So hence my focus on providing jobs, because it is jobs that help us support our families. And when I talk about families and young people, I have a policy that will have 100,000 homes for £100,000, because we really need a fresh start in that area. Because one of the areas Sadiq Khan has mostly failed is he has no target for family homes. So the Tamil community, a young community, a community that is still coming to the country, needs somewhere to settle. And that means you're going to need a family home. So a mayor who does not have a plan to build family homes is of very little use to growing communities. That's why I'll have a target for family homes. That's why I'll allow people to buy their homes. 87% of Londoners want to own their own home. So I'll help them fulfill that dream. And the last comment I'll make before I take questions is about crime. Crime in London is out of control. Crime in London is so bad, we now export it to the rest of the country. We've had an 86% rise in robbery, a 60% rise in knife crime, burglary, record levels, sexual attacks on the transport network, record levels. This is my #1 concern, to make sure that we and our families are safe. So I'll be putting 8,000 new police officers on the streets. I'll be reopening the 38 stations closed by the current mayor, police stations that is. I will make sure London is safe. Because if we want our communities to thrive, if we want our businesses to grow, if we want our children to be safe, we have to make sure the streets of London are safe. Remember, the Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, said the streets of London are no longer safe for women and girls. I do not think that's acceptable. Somebody needs to take responsibility. I will take that responsibility, because London needs a fresh start. But I'm Shaun Bailey. I'm your Conservative candidate for Mayor of London, and I'm happy to take questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Shaun, for that introduction. So I got a question from Shangavi. So can I invite Shangavi, please? Thank you.
Shankavi, unmute, please.
Hello, my name is Changavi. I'm a medical student at Imperial College London, and I'm very proud to be a part of the committee that's spearheading Tamil Heritage Month in the UK. As young British Tamils, we feel very strongly about our roots and heritage, and in fact, we feel that the values that our culture and heritage teaches us empowers us to be better citizens of this country. And it's of course something that we want to celebrate and share with the wider community. Being in a city as multicultural as London, I've personally benefited from my friends and colleagues of different cultures and ethnicities sharing their experiences. For example, having a month dedicated to Black history has allowed me personally to better understand the plight of my Black colleagues, and it's continually enabling me to be a better ally. So in much the same way, this is something we want to see with Tamil heritage as well in the UK. You might be aware that the Canadian Parliament has proclaimed the month of January as Tamil Heritage Month in 2016. So my question to you is, will you support this initiative of Tamil Heritage Month and champion Tamil Heritage Month initiative within the London Assembly?
So the short answer is yes. The long answer is yes. But I don't want to just say yes. You know, politicians say yes when they want something. So I want to demonstrate to you why. So the key thing is, I think City Hall should be a crossroads. It should be a crossroads for the world. London's past has been very international. You know, I was born and raised in London, come from a very, very poor family, But because this country has such links, and I used to do things with the army and gymnastics, etc., I've been to many places in the world. I want that feeling, I want that possibility to be alive in London, because it's the meeting of people that really changes, broadens your horizon. It gives you the opportunity to become someone who's multicultural. I think reading about people is nice, meeting them is 10 times better. So let's do that. So what I'll do, and this has just come to my mind now because of your request, I will put time aside in City Hall. We have a thing called London's Living Room. I'll put time aside to host, I was going to say nations, but I suppose it's more about groups. It's more about people, how people identify themselves. I'll put that time, that space, and that funding aside to allow people to celebrate their culture. And I will use the platform as Mayor of London to amplify that. So anything from putting on our website, giving them the space to have the celebration. Because one of the things I want to do is have a Festival of London. And now that you've given me that idea, I will make the Festival of London have a big theme of internationalism, so we can display to the rest of the world how many nationalities we have here, how many languages we speak here, and it gives you the opportunity to then represent your culture, your way, but on my platform, because my platform, of course, would be London's platform.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
Thank you, Shaun. The next question from Charles.
Charles, Anna, you can unmute, please.
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yes,
Yeah.
we can.
Yes, thank you for giving me this opportunity. PM Boris Johnson had been saying that he will give amnesty for illegal migrants in the UK. Do you support that loaded statement as a Conservative candidate, and how can you possibly do something to realize that noble cause and accommodate them in the mainstream in education and employment?
That's a great question. I'll say two things about that. Firstly, it's easy for me to support that in two senses. One, obviously, I'm the son of immigrants. I know I have some feeling about what it is to be in this country and not be welcome, be cut adrift. So I understand that. It's easy for me to support it from an emotional point of view, from my own point of view. And of course, if the leader of my party says it, there's less of a battle for me to have. I think what I can do as Mayor of London is remind, is campaign, is cajole, is say to the PM, let's do the work to make that happen. Because I think as Mayor of London, you always should challenge the government. As the government, they now have to figure out how that works. How many people does the amnesty apply to? What's the criteria? How do we, in your words, support those people to come in and become mainstream? That's a piece of work for the country. And I absolutely would support that piece of work. And I think the biggest thing I can do is not only push the PM, but push the government as well. We all look at the government as the party in government. And yes, of course, that is true. But the other part is the mechanism of government, is civil service. They need to be encouraged to look at this as well. And of course, if we can get the PM to give that direction, that could happen. So yes, I think in London in particular, it could have a real positive effect, because there's a lot of people in London who need their status updated.
Thank you, Shaun. The next one is Gauri. She got a question about the housing. Thank you, Gauri. You should be able to unmute yourself.
Gauri, can you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hi, Shaun.
Hi. Hello.
Hi, Shaun. Nice to meet you. I work as a advisor, citizens advice in my local Barking and Dagenham. So I come across a lot of clients on low income, especially single mothers from Black and Asian minority groups. They are on minimum wage and they bringing up children. Like you've said that you come across, you've experienced homelessness. You've been brought up by a single mother, and I'm sure that you understand what I'm talking about. So there's a benefit cap for people who are working age families who are not working 16 hours, and only local housing allowance is less than the market rent, so they cannot make ends meet. There are systems that to mitigate that problem, like discretionary housing payments. You have to apply for it. This is discretionary, so you might get it, you might not get it. And the families they just struggle. And I was wondering whether you would propose something like Berlin, they've introduced rent cap to overcome gentrification. So I was thinking that maybe you could talk to me about it.
Okay, so the first thing I say, rent caps don't work. Every city in the world that's had a rent cap has then had less housing, more expensive housing, and lower quality housing. That's just a statistical fact. The best way I think to help is twofold. One, we go to the government and we ask for the whole system to be sped up and more to be given. And that, unfortunately, because the Mayor of London is not the government, that's an ask and a continual ask. The thing the Mayor of London could do is more effective, but will take more time. We need more housing. The reason we have big housing problems in London is because we simply don't have enough housing. And it's one of the things where I remember when Sadiq Khan ran last time, he talked about 80,000 homes a year. He's only built 23,000 homes in 5 years, and it's compounded the problem. So the two things I want to do, you hear me talk about 100,000 homes for £100,000, because people who can enter that arena, that lessens the pressure on social housing. And then I'll build more and more and more social housing, because this housing generates a little bit of money and we have money from the government. I then have more money to apply into social housing, because the reason I was homeless growing up is because the council housed my mother when she had 2 children, and they were obligated to keep housing her, but they weren't obligated to house a young man. I'm sure you know more about this than even I do. But it then meant we all grew up in council housing. We all did the right thing, tried to get educated, got work, and that disallowed us getting housed. And that's that piece I want to break. I want to make sure that people who absolutely need council housing, we call it social housing now, you know this, we have in more and more and enough to do that. And then we lower the cost so people who work can afford housing without paying, you know, half, 3/4 of their salaries to their housing cost. But ultimately, to go right back to the crux of your questions, rent caps sound good, but they don't work. They only work for the people who already have property. Because what happens is I cap your rent, but because there's no money in the system, it means we build less. So it becomes even harder to get housing. And the difference between us and Berlin, London is significantly bigger. Our population is bigger, our city is younger. And the younger piece is important because we are having more children. Young people tend to have children. Obviously, elderly people don't. So it's, when people make the comparison, they're not comparing apples and pears. But I hear what you're saying is a desperate problem in London. And the best thing about having a mayor who has some kind of relationship with the government, we're much more likely to get the resolution that we need.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you. I wish you all the best. Sure.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Shaun. Lead on to the housing, and we'll invite Derwan from the CEO of the Tamil Housing Association. Thank you, Derwan.
Sorry, Derwan, you're breaking up. Turn your video off.
Hi, Derwan. We can't hear you. Please check your signal strength.
Derwan, if you have your video on, turn it off. It should make your signal much stronger. Just your video, and I can hear the audio.
I think that
lost him.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. I will move on to the next one. Is Aravi is here? She would like to ask something about environment. Aravi. Okay, I think before she comes, can I ask Dr. Puvi, you would like to ask a question about mental health? Yeah,
as I previously mentioned, this pandemic, COVID, has brought to light so many mental health issues like depression, social isolation, anxieties, and post-traumatic stress disorders from the civil war in Sri Lanka, and re-traumatized by this COVID. And there are quite a lot of suicides as well in our community recently. And there were a few in family side as well. 2 family sides happened recently. Very unusual in this community. So how, as a newly elected mayor, how you will support the Tamil community to tackle this mental health issues?
Thank you for the question. It's very, very close to my heart. One of the things you may not know about me, I've been a youth worker for over 20 years, and I did a lot of work with young people, and unfortunately some of them committed suicide as well. So suicide has always been, it's always been at the top of my heart, and of course that brings in issues of mental health, because obviously that's what it's really about. So I think there's two things in particular that I've always thought we need to do more of in this country about mental health. One is protect people's mental well-being. We often talk about people too late when their mental health situation has become very acute, very severe. And what we need to do is have much more open conversations about people's mental health to help them maintain good mental health. It's why I started out my comments when I talked about the time I had in Sri Lanka, looking at the strength of family, the people around you. Where do you have your joy? Where do you have your pain? Who supports you? And it's why, unbelievably, you hear me talk about family housing. Isolation is a very big part of mental health. And that's why under COVID, the numbers have unfortunately gone in the wrong direction. So the first piece is to have much more knowledge, much more public conversation about how we keep mental health. Teach parents, teach children in school, on the Mayor's website, in anything we sponsor, make sure that they deliver our mental health messages about preserving your mental health. That's one thing. The second piece is to actually speak to the Tamil helpline. Because when you talk about helping a particular community, I come from the Black community, for instance, how we deal with mental health is often, we keep it secret. We are often ashamed of it. And the only way to get help is to elicit people within that community to give us the in, so we can have the conversation, we can come alongside people and support them. And that will be me needing your help. When I said to the first questioner that I will open City Hall in order to bring people in, this is one of the reasons I want to bring people in, so that I can learn and understand where I need to bring the help to. Mental health in this country, I would like to believe, is becoming more and more important. I will be part of pushing that agenda to make sure mental health is high on people's agenda, because ultimately, if you have good mental health, it gives you a better chance of having good physical health as well.
Thank you.
Can I invite Arnold to ask you a question? Arnold, please.
Shaun, it's nice to meet you, and quite precise your thoughts. Would like to ask, what do you understand about the Tamil community who are here? What made us flee from our hometowns and end up in UK and all far-flung places all over the world? What do you understand about our struggles and our aspirations? What is your understanding about the Tamil community's requirements?
I think, let me put it in this way. So when my community came here, we came here with, it was fun, it was joy. We weren't escaping any persecution. We packed our bags, and it was about building our families in a different place. My understanding of the Tamil community here, they were escaping persecution. They were escaping genocide. They were escaping being attacked. You know, if things had been different, then they may have stayed in Sri Lanka. So when if I'm wrong about that, then please do educate me. But my understanding is the Tamil community came for their safety. They came for their safety. They came to keep themselves and their families safe, because they could see no end coming to the persecution that they were under. There was no justice there. And that hence the UN resolution is important to the community, because you're seeking justice. And I'm very proud to be part of a party that is pushing that forward. But if that's my start point, which it is, it then means your requirements are different. So how are we helping young Tamils who may have been involved in things that you wouldn't want your children involved in, seen persecution, seen attacks, you know, had to leave their homes in the middle of the night? The experience of my community was different. We left our homes as a plan. You left your homes in an emergency. How do we deal with that? How do we make sure that the Tamil community integrates quickly? You have an advantage, I believe, over my community, because so many Tamils are highly professional, have lots of doctors and lawyers, etc. And I think that level of education and that level of success in your community is a gateway to moving forward. But it would seem to me the needs are to make sure that the community feels welcome, that their voice is being heard, that any mental health issues, psychological issues are brought to the fore, because I can't stand outside your community and make that resolution. I have to be brought in to support your community with that. And I can only make myself available and ask for your help to come in that way. Also as well, there's parts of the Tamil community, as Arun was saying, young people, who have serious levels of unemployment. And if our community understands one thing, it's the devastating effect that unemployment can have on your young people. It exposes them to some of the less pleasant things that are possible in London. It robs them of their future. So for me, it's to make sure that we help you resolve any issues that being persecuted gives you, and make sure we make it even easier to succeed in this country. Because I mean, I have 2 children. If you could make me believe that my children's future is secure, for me, that's job done. And I'd like to help the Tamil community believe that their children are going to succeed and thrive here.
Thank you very much.
you.
Best wishes.
Thank you.
Next one is Aravi. Are you there?
Hi there. Yes, I'm there. Thank you. Sorry about earlier. Hi, Shaun. My name's Arabi. I'm currently a master's student studying international relations, and I love your idea of the London Festival, by the way. That sounds absolutely brilliant, and I hope that comes to fruition. So yeah, the environment is one of many issues that are close to my heart, and as we know, it's also a large shared concern by many. So this is a bit of a vague question, but could you speak a bit about your aims regarding improving the environment, particularly on the subject of zero waste, if possible?
I'm glad you brought that up, but let me just give you the big chunks and I'll get to waste at the end. So my big chunk is, I think we've taken the wrong approach to solving air quality problems in London. What we've done is tax people to, say pay to pollute the air. What we need to do is attack the source of the poor air. So what I'll be doing is zero emissioning the whole bus fleet and also the whole cab fleet. And that's the equivalent of taking 2.1 million cars off the road to improve air quality. The other big chunk is about access to public space, green land. If the pandemic and lockdown taught us anything, it's the value of public space, how that works, how we keep it open, how we develop new spaces. Because as London's population grows, those spaces come under more and more pressure. And I have a lot of policy within my manifesto to make sure those spaces keep open. And there's other environmental concerns like runoff and heat control in London, because London is a big concrete pad. In the summer we heat up and etc. like that. And we need runoff because parts of London flood quite a bit because there's so much concrete everywhere. I want to also protect the biodiversity of London. I've been in London my entire life. If you go back probably 20 years, there was many more songbirds, greater variety of insects, greater variety of plants. We need meadowland in London. I have a plan to restore some of that as well. When you talk about waste, what's interesting is my mother never wasted anything. Absolutely nothing, just nothing got wasted in our house. And I've always wondered why we overpackage things. You buy, you buy a camera, you buy perfume, you buy food, and it's in so many packets. So I think there's 2 big things we can do in London about waste. One is be part of the conversation about having less packaging, just period. Reuse that bottle, buy some of our groceries in a container that you bring back to the supermarket. Just don't have so much packaging and waste in the first place. And the second bit is we need to up our recycling levels in London. They are pretty low. It's a big challenge because boroughs have separate contracts and also very separate. So for instance, I live in East London out in Havering. We have a lot of green waste. Where I came from in Ladbroke Grove, nobody had a garden, so there's no green waste. So it isn't quite the same across London. But I think in concert with the central government and using our collective purchasing power in London, we can up our recycling rates if we're careful. And I would just like to have a bigger conversation with the country about just how much packaging we use. Because of course, if you don't generate the waste in the first place, you don't have to burn it, you don't have to bury it, because it simply doesn't exist.
Thank you. The next question from Derwin, who we lost earlier on. Derwin.
I do apologize. It was a poor bandwidth. I hope that you'll be able to stay with us, or I'll be able to get through this. Shaun, thank you very much for joining us tonight. As I said, my name is Derwin, CEO for Tamil Community Housing Association. We are a registered housing provider like any other housing association, LNQ or someone else. As you already touched on this topic about housing, homelessness and unemployed, Shaun, in your talk, in many ways, my question or my kind of summary is a bit of an extension of the conversation that we already started. We've been working, Tamil Housing being part of something called BME London, Housing Landlords and BME National. We have a seat at the Mayor's Londoners Housing Forum at the moment. We hope that whether the color of the curtains at GLA is red or blue, that kind of approach will continue. We very much hope that will be the case with regard to a seat at the table. As you know, we as housing associations and community groups have been at the brunt of the COVID-19 pandemic in terms of dealing with the pragmatic day-to-day, the foot soldiers on the ground dealing with some of these challenges. Mayor has set up a COVID-19 task force, and we've been requesting for a seat at the table on those areas, whether it's COVID-19 task force or any future big policy issues that affect the Tamil community or the wider BME community in that context. We would like really to find out your thoughts and your views about having that seat at the table, in particular for the smaller housing providers and also the communities that we represent. What I mean by that, I can cite you the best possible example. When the COVID-19 struck, one of the key things that Tamil Housing did was we actually put in a consultant to support about 10 or 15 community groups to tap into charitable funding. So we are not just a housing provider looking after the residents, but we also have a wider social responsibility for our communities, the local communities whom we serve. I think it's important any mayor of London recognize that wider role that we play, and also acknowledge the specific issues that affect that specific communities. So for example, there is significant hidden homelessness within the Tamil community, which is I don't think any local authority or the GLA have a greater number of data around what's happening within hidden homelessness. So many Tamils are key workers. About Tamils are key workers, we talk about doctors and nurses. We also have the retail, the people who work on the retail sector. There's been a big thing about the COVID-19 and how that impact on the bus drivers and you know, cleaners and retail workers and so on. I firmly believe there got to be a new definition for key workers going forward, where our communities, the minority communities could significantly benefit from. There's very little data at City Hall at the moment around rough sleepers, in particular how specific communities, including the Tamil communities, affected by rough sleepers. We, as specific, culturally specific housing associations, will set up to serve communities.
Let me come in, Dervin, and try to cover, because you covered a wide span. I'm going to start with the thing that's closest to my heart. Nobody in this world has to explain to me about hidden homeless. I spent my entire 20s being hidden homeless. I've been hidden homeless all over this city. So when I tell you that I cannot tell you how important that is to me. There is no words to express how much I know about being hidden homeless. So I just want to part of that. Secondly, when you talk about the small housing providers, I have a special task for you actually. So I will be setting up something called Housing for London, which will be a City Hall owned and backed housing provider to cover all of London with one goal: to produce housing, affordable housing in London. That will be its specific goal. The task I have for the smaller housing providers, such as yourself, is small sites policy. If City Hall, if Sadiq Khan has completely messed up one thing, it's how we use small sites. So I will be coming to you with the funding to build. Planning risk for you around small sites will simply evaporate. And the only reason you and I will talk is if you're going to deliver. If you're not going to deliver, I'll move on to the next one. That is my task for you. You will be building. I will provide the money. We will get on with it. It's as simple as that. And I specifically singled out small housing providers because they are, I hope, are fleet of foot. You're not in it for the big profit. You're in it for providing housing. I'm relying on you to deliver the housing that we need. The lady earlier on who asked about housing for people who can't make ends meet, who are single parents, who are not getting enough money, you're my answer to them. So when I say your seat at the table, we're going to go well beyond your seat at the table. It will be your pick and shovel on site. I really want to get you moving, because that's how we answer the question that lady asked about how do we actually help people. I think one of the real weaknesses in London of Sadiq Khan, lots of sweet words, lots and lots and lots of sweet word, very little action. I want action. I want impact. Anybody who comes to me with a plan to house Londoners and they're not being greedy, I will back them. And I'm pretty sure that's where all of your activities lie. So if I'm mayor, you will be busier than you've ever been. You won't even talk about the top table. I will come and find you. You won't have to come and find me. That is my #1 goal, apart from making the streets safe in London. My #1 goal. And when you talk about the health of the BME community, I have 2 things to say. Yes, we suffered the brunt of COVID, but we suffered for 2 reasons: where we work and our level of health. And I'm being general here, so you know, for some communities it will be slightly different. I used to sit on the board of a hospital. Public health is so. If I had a magic wand, if I could change anything for my community, your community, it'd be to increase their health. Poor health outcomes in our communities are the norm. High blood pressure, angina, all of those things. I want to educate our community so we don't suffer from, because then COVID can't hunt us down. And the other piece is why I'm personally running for mayor is to send a message. You can be an immigrant in London, you could be poor in London, you could come from a single family in London, you could have come up the hard way, does not matter. We can succeed, we can get educated, and we can be at the table, we can be in the big job. That is my personal mission. It's why I bother with this. It's why when they lie about me in the newspaper or they attack me, I don't care, because I want to signify for people that conservatism is the way that our communities move forward. The most successful immigrant communities in this country are the ones who come here, get involved, integrate, and become conservatives, and I want to embody that. So all of the topics you've talked about, I guarantee will happen, and you will never, ever have to concern yourself about when you be at the top table. I will entertain a visit from you in several different arenas, purely just because you're the Tamil community and you have something I want. Politics, I'm not this slick politician. I don't care what the Conservative Party do, what Labour do. I want people to thrive. And the best way to do that is to learn directly from the people you're trying to represent. City Hall will be a crossroads for the world. City Hall will be open to all Londoners. We'll have the conversation, because if I can't say yes to you, I'll at least explain why I've said no.
Shaun, 10 seconds on a new definition for key workers.
Sorry, Devan, we got time is running out. Next, I got Thayar Nadaraja. Sorry, unmute yourself, Thayar Nadaraja.
Shaun, I'm actually something different. I'm actually a coach operator in London. I'm actually I live in Sunbury, which is one of your friends' borough, Spelton, which is K-Wasi Quatum. My question is, I know the Arabi was asking about emissions, and then you wanted to bring all the buses into 0 emissions. How this is possible? I have spent in 2019 under the Sadiq Khan's law, where bringing ultra low emission zone, ULE stat. I spent myself £700,000 upgrading 2 of our brand new coaches and the 116-seater minibus and all that kind of thing. We had to spend £700,000 in 2019. Due to a COVID, our business now on the knees at the moment. Okay, is your government going to support the coach operators or not?
I can't answer for the government. All I can say is this. Business in London has suffered because we have no clients. Of course, COVID has made that happen. My goal is to make sure that London is safe to visit so that we can bring those people back. And furlough, all the government support has been great, but the thing you really need is customers. You need to be able to operate in London. And I'll say this, the congestion charge, I'm going to bring it back to where it was. The ultra low emission zone, I'm not going to expand it. And the outer London border tax that Sadiq Khan wants to bring in, I'm not going to bring that in as well, because all of those costs make it harder to run a business in London, which means we get less people employed. So what you should be thinking is that I'm a pro-business mayor, so I'll support you in that way. And if you talk about coaches in particular, if there's one set of people I need to be able to come to London easily, it's people like you who bring customers to London. So I will support coaches to make sure that happens, because London is nothing without people. London is a city that works through footfall. It doesn't matter if you sell coffee or you sell insurance. It only works if London is full of people. So I will facilitate a London that is safely full of people.
Nandha, can I read the question from the chat box? A few questions.
Sorry, one last question I'm going to take. Arun, you got the last question, then we will wrap up the things because Shaun got another meeting to go. Sorry about that. Arun, your last question. Are you there, Arun? No? All right, okay, so we need to wrap it up. So once again, thank you, Shaun, joining us this evening. And before we finish off, would you like to say final words to me to summarize and why we need to vote for you? Thank you.
I just want to say this. For me, this is about how safe our families are, where do we work, and how nice is London to live in. London needs a fresh start, and I'm the fresh start that London needs. We cannot continue to move in the direction we're moving now. When it comes to the Tamil community, indeed all communities in London, remember my past. My past has been one of a community worker. I'm not a politician who'll get elected and then disappear. I'm a politician who'll get elected and you'll see more of me, because it is my view that to help London succeed, you need to bring in all the expertise, you need to have all the opinions of the people in London. And the other piece I'll say as well, when they're up to question about mental health, I cannot tell you, it's so important for people to feel like they have somewhere to go to relieve that pressure in our communities. And that's something that I'll be big on in City Hall. And the last thing I'll say is, have a good evening. I look forward to celebrating New Year with you on the 14th as well. You know, really, really do have a good time, and good evening to you and your family.
Good luck.
Thank you, Shaun. Thank you for joining with us this evening. And also we had a very wonderful engagement. Many people would like to ask so many questions. The chat box is full of questions. Unfortunately, we couldn't fulfill everybody's needs. The time is very short and you got another engagement as well. I'm sure this dialogue will continue near future as well until the election day. And we look forward to see you in the campaign trail very soon. So on behalf of Tamil Helpline, I would like to thank you, Shaun, and the Member of Parliament, Elliot Colburn and Paul Scully, and also all your participants as well. Thank you very much, and we will join again next Friday for the next another event. Thank you. Good evening to you all. Thanks.
Bye.